Thank you for joining us today on another Coach's Corner webinar. I am Adam with 1080, and I have my colleagues Matt and Jesse joining, but I have the guests of honor today, Chris Korfist, JT Ayers, and Eric Lichter. If you guys don't know these guys, look them up on social media. They have some really, really good stuff. So I'm really excited to bring three of our users onto this platform, and we're going to really dive in more to the high school market. And this is something that we have not done a lot of in the past. We've talked more of like, hey, elite football or elite track, and we just know that there's a lot of customers out there using our equipment at the high school, in the adolescent, long-term athletic development space. And so I think we're going to bring some really interesting insights here from these three guests. So let's go to school today, right? Let's dig in here a little bit. So my first question, and Chris, I'm going to kick this over to you, is our 10-year user, and then Eric, you can join in as a 5-year user, and then JT as our newbie. But man, I'm hearing you on podcasts, you're crushing it, you're figuring this stuff out. And I think you guys will bring some great insight. But our first question right now to Chris. In the high school world, what are we doing right by bringing motorized technology into the track and field space, into the speed development space? What are we doing right?
I, by the way, this is kind of like an AA thing. I've been AA for 10 years,
That's right.
10-year user. So what are we doing right with motorized resistance? I think, I think there's a lot. I think to start with, we're actually getting people to run rather than lift. I think that's always a good one. I think we are quantifying what speed is. And once you can quantify something and give a number to chase and strategies to do so, I think you're going to have improvement, especially with high school kids who like to gamify everything. And I just think acceleration is the name of the game. I think the new thing on the app where after you have your leaderboard, you click the analyze and then you can actually see everyone run and you compare everyone. Nothing screams I got to work harder on my start than that because very rarely will you see someone make up ground after they get out. And we've been using that with 40 and 60-meter runs. So we're actually breaking down our 60 meters and kids actually get the idea that I really got to get out of the blocks. There's no, I'm getting out, and you're thinking about low heel recovery or whatever term they saw on TikTok or YouTube, and it's all about you got to get out now or it's over. So I think we're actually seeing what it actually looks like if you want to truly want to improve speed.
Eric, what do you think? What are we getting right?
I mean, I think Chris nailed every point. I love what he said about getting kids to run rather than lift. I listen. I think strength is so important, especially at certain junctures of an athlete's development. But I really think that I always say that I think a lot of athletes and coaches who want kids to get fast make strength training $1,000 stock. And it's not $1,000 stock; it's a $250 stock, and we shouldn't make it $1,000 stock. And with 1080 sprint and motorized resistance assistance, you just cannot produce the power. Anybody who's really worked with 1080 and has really watched their athletes develop and knows the weight room and all the velocity based technologies that we try to incorporate in the weight room, you can't produce that power. You can't produce those forces at those speeds in a weight room that you can in a 40 or 50% V deck, with a 1080 sprint working on acceleration. So I think it's bridging the gap. It's allowing us to not have to struggle so much with how much lifting, how much running, how much conditioning. You can get a lot of bang for your buck, and you can sort of bridge that gap between them, right? So I think that's a huge thing. And then for sure that I love assisted sprinting for a ton of reasons, but at this time of year, we really, as we get closer to the end of the road, the last 6 weeks before regionals and states, assisted sprinting is such an incredible tool to peak athletes at the right time as you're pulling volume away and you're trying to increase intensity, which means running faster. That's my goal of intensity. That overspeed's a game changer for lining kids up in the blocks at the end of their season and just popping off crazy drops at the end. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, but Chris really, I think, nailed it. And I just loved the getting kids to run rather than lift. It's huge.
I think you have the kid that shows up and says, "Yeah, I got a 500-pound squat and a 300." All these different numbers, these magical numbers that get you a T-shirt and put you up on a wall somewhere. and then you actually put them on a machine and they can see that the amount, as you said, the amount of money they invested into the weight room really didn't carry over very well because the ratio of force is like 48.
Mm.
Well, dude, you can squat 1,000, but with the ratio of force of 48, you're not going anywhere. It's over for you. Welcome to 5-2. But coach clocked me to 4-6. No way. No way.
Yep.
It's not there. It's not going to happen. Now you can get really strong and we can learn how to apply that force in a different direction. And then maybe you can get to your 4-7, 4-6 type stuff. But it all comes down to physics. And I think that's the hardest jump that kids make is, well, and I was there too. If I can squat 500 pounds, I'm going to run a 4-4-40. No. If I can apply that force in a certain direction, then I've got a shot. But uh, we've got to, you have to understand physics to understand what's going to make you fast. And I think when you can quantify it, you're into science.
Well, do you guys think it's the quantification? I think that's a piece of it. So I work with a lot of customers. I think there's a piece to be able to show here's how much force you're producing, or if you're force velocity profile, seeing the ratio of forces you're speaking to, Chris. But I grew up as a coach learning not to talk as much, right? So when I first started coaching, I talked all the time. Now I try to run this webinar, not talk too much, but I really want them to feel what they're supposed to feel. So I find the big value is like loading someone up to have to feel that pushing into the ground to get that physic vector that we want. And that you can really dive right into specifics. Is that something that you guys use it for, or do you always are looking at the data?
Oh, I use it for the same thing, for that as well. Like you got to learn. I tell them you got to spin the world the wrong way. Spin the world away, spin the world away from where you're pushing. So you're trying to spin the planet wrong way. So you're actually pushing back down on the ground. But yeah, you can overweight it and you can get them in positions, and that's very helpful as well. I don't measure every workout. Um, like if we're short on time, just set up variable, go boom, 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 boom. You're going to get just by your settings, you are creating the practice or getting the outcomes that you are trying to get or desire.
So
I've been
let's
doing the same thing as Chris is doing. The data is great. It's all meaningless unless the athlete actually knows what the data means. I mean, that's any kind of key performance indicator. I mean, we can talk to them about ratio of force and the amount of, how much force they're putting to the ground per step when their drive phase ends. All that data is great. I love it as a coach. But unless I can take a high schooler and sit them down and see that their improvement is happening as time goes on, it's all meaningless. And so, that's been super helpful for me is having the data. But I have a large team. Sometimes I just need to put on, like what Chris was saying, a variable and let them go. Because ultimately, all that matters is that track meet. All that matters is what they ran in the 100 and if they were able to improve or beat the athlete in the other lane. So it's a tool. And I know we'll talk about it more later, but a huge part of the 1080 is safety. I mean, I love assisted sprinting, but there's not a lot of options out there that are safe. And I've tried them all. And I'm definitely not going to use a bungee, which I'm going to like throw their, into weird scoliosis as we do it. But I mean, I've used the pulley system and every single time you use it, you're like, this kid might die by the time they get done. Like we don't know. So having an option that keeps it safe, it was worth every dime that went into this 1080 machine and every fundraiser we did. And I know we'll talk about it more later, but I guess my main aspect is I have athletes now walking up to me and asking, let's look at the data, and I write it all down, and then I show them, and we chart it out on a spreadsheet week by week, or every other week. I have data from October to now, and the kids are seeing their rate of improvement, and just that thought alone allows them to believe that they can do something really good.
That's a good segue, and we'll dive into assisted and kind of overspeed next, and we'll go in reverse order. So we'll go JT first, kind of the first dabble into overspeed and whatnot, and then Eric with his fast athletes TM trademarked, and then Chris Korfist probably helped invent it way back when as well. So this idea of feel, kind of Adam's original question, as well as the data. So it's like using assistants to teach, right? With that like baby giraffe high school athlete growth spurt, right? Can you just run well with the assistants? But then there's the other side where it's like, yes, we can pull them at super maximal speed safely during peak week. Let's just hit some numbers. So in such a simple tool, you can use it kind of multiple different ways. Kind of again, 1 year experience to 5 to 10. Kind of how do you guys think about apply the different uses of kind of assisted sprinting and overspeed?
I've always operated with the assumption, and I basically just had this assumption because I had good mentors say something along the lines of, "Hey, 6 weeks out from the state championship, introduce overspeed and be smart with it. Don't overdo it. The volume is down, the intensity is high. They're starting to feel really fast and really good." And that has proved really successful for us for a long period of time. But now that we have a 1080 machine, now that it's a lot safer, I now have people and mentors, including Korfist, saying things like, "Why don't you just sprinkle it in all the time?" I've on my podcast, we've interviewed, these biomechanists all over the world, and they're like, "Oh no, we use overspeed all the time, and we love it." And so this season, we've been dabbling in it a little bit, where on a fly day, we're doing handoffs, we're doing flies, and then the last couple of reps, I go, "All right, overspeed," and I'm measuring to see if we're doing about 5% better than they could. And I mean, I have one girl athlete that ran a 304 fly 30 the other day, and I was like, "That's way too fast. Okay, we're done. Calm down." And but she felt fast and happy, and we moved on. But the idea of overspeed is, what are we trying to achieve? I have not used a 1080 in total transparency and looking at their meters per second and what's on the actual the box. I have the Sprint 2. I'm not looking yet. I don't know what it means, but I do know is that I'm actually helping my athletes learn about stride frequency and increasing that over time. And we're sprinkling it in from January. And for me in California, we go all the way until May. And so we've just adding in a little bit of time. We're not even going to do it this week because we have 2 big trek meets. Totally fine. And so overspeed has and assisted sprinting has really helped me. But one important aspect with that is have people in your lives, and maybe the people on this podcast you can reach out to, or on this webinar rather, they need to tell you how to set this thing up. They need to tell you how to do it. I've been on many phone calls with Adam and Chris, and Matt and I've talked, and I'm sure Eric has good things to share, even though him and I just met. But the idea is this: you need people in your life to tell you how to use these tools effectively. Because the one thing I don't want to do is put an athlete on on a 1080 and go, "Good luck," and I have no idea what we're doing. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. And so learning how to use the overspeed, I mean, it took me a little bit of time. Just before this webinar, and I'll just say this real quick. For us, I had a really tough time at the very beginning how to use it. I hooked my sophomore son, who's a really good sprinter and hurdler, and I said, "All right, if you die, no one's going to sue me. So let's try this thing out." And he actually fell. And after the assisted sprinting was done, the cord was on the ground. It got around his foot, and he fell and scraped up his whole body. He got that track rash, road rash. So I had to go back to the drawing board and figure it out. And Adam actually helped me by sending me a whole lot of videos of what I think there were people in Sweden doing it. And if those Vikings can do it, by golly, we can do it. And so now every single athlete that uses the 1080 is well versed, really like conditioned and experienced now to run. And when they're done doing the fly 30 or whatever I have them doing, they actually grab the cord, pull it off, continue on their deceleration, and then the cord just kind of goes off to the side, goes up into the area that I have as the starting 0 point, and then it stops, and everyone's safe, everyone's happy, and I've timed their fly 30 with a free lap, and everyone's happy because they went really fast.
Eric, what are you doing in your space for assisted sprinting?
So I don't have 10 years of using the 1080, but I've got 7 1080s, right? So I've got a lot of volume going on all over the place. And so we use it obviously depending upon the population that we're with, but we're doing it year round. And so, I'm glad Chris told you, JT, to incorporate it year round, because speed, as we know, has got to be trained every 5 to 7 days or we lose it, right? So I think the 3 main areas that we use it for is certainly coordination and neuromuscular coordination. We've got athletes that aren't very coordinated. Their ground contact times are very slow, right? The 1080 forces them. So we use it during drilling. We use it during, A drills or dribbles or whatever it is. And we even pull athletes that aren't ready to be pulled. We pull them safely, but the brain figures it out. It figures out how to not fall, right? A lot of athletes, JT, your son must be like absolutely fearless and a kamikaze, because most athletes, when they're on a tether and it's too fast, the brain senses danger, and they're gonna put the heel into the ground. They're
Yeah, the
gonna be like
heels
the
come in.
horse that doesn't want to come out the stable, and they're gonna fight it. And there's not many athletes that can't stop that run if they don't want. If they want to, they can get out of that run and stop that thing, right? So we use it for a lot of coordination and for having the athlete feel. There's a lot of that feel, and we know in track and field that feel is a lot of it, right? The pace, the ground contacts, and the sounds in the ground. We're always talking about feel, and I think it's just to step back for a moment, and I'll come back to this. But I think it's great with the data. We're never going to be paralyzed by data, but I think if you can shine light on what's important and have the athlete understand why it's important. And then we take a lot of video. All good coaches take video on the track, angles, positions, patterns, right? And when what you see on the video is confirmed by the data that that's a better angle, that's a better ground contact, that's a better body position. Sometimes we got to take 2 steps backward to go, 4 steps ahead, right? But when we're consistently getting better outputs and the video and the data line up, the athlete says, okay, bam. And it really sort of makes that light bulb turn on. But back to assisted sprinting. So we'll use it in drills. We'll definitely use it for acceleration. I love assisted sprinting for aggressive acceleration, right? And I love the fact that now 1080 allows us to sort of turn it on hot and back it down with variable resistance. So we can sort of have the pull be pretty aggressive out of the block or out of the early run. And then as they have to sort of switch with greater speed and greater intent, as they get closer to their speed, we can back that resistance down so it feels more natural. And then, top end speed is a game changer with assisted sprinting. So like I think the biggest thing that I can offer in my belief, and it's been very successful, and I say that because we've seen, and these are track only kids. These aren't football kids that I'm getting after football season. And there's been a serious knockback in their top end speed. Their start hasn't changed much because football's a burst sport. But you get really, really high level sprinters that come off football season, and their top end speed is significantly slower. And you have to build that back up. You can't throw them in an indoor track meet here in Ohio in December. They're not ready, right? You've got to get those exposures back, and you've got to get those big motor units to grow again and to get stimulated. But with track only athletes, the foundation for a good track season is speed, and it is not conditioning. It is not a base of work. It is speed. And so my belief in the off season, when the high school season ends, we certainly might go to New Balance Outdoor Nationals or U20s if they're that good, or Pan Ams if they're that good. Whatever the summer that we can get in and get out of. But once we're kind of done, we give them 2 weeks, 3 weeks off. Their body's been through a lot, indoor, outdoor, and then we start chasing speed. From July to October, we're on the track Mondays and Thursdays, and we are sprinting, and we are chasing one rabbit. We are chasing top end speed. And the goal is to slowly break the glass ceiling. And every sprinter that's in that high school age group, my goal is for them to get 1 to 1.5 miles per hour faster from July to October. And what that looks like is Monday, high quality sprint day, Thursday, high quality sprint day, Friday, weight room. And they're not allowed to touch their legs any other of those days. I want those 4 days in between. I don't want them doing anything. I want them being lazy, because that's how they really get faster. And we use assisted sprinting, and we do a lot of 80-meter pulls where they're getting a 40-meter build in and they're ripping out the last 40. And we are trying to, obviously, we care about shapes, positions, and patterns. We're not just looking for fast runs that look like a car's crashing off the highway at the end. But we're trying to gradually expose them to those speeds. And then, of course, we do a lot of non-assisted runs, resisted runs, but we're staying in that 95% or higher output up to that 102, 103% output. And we're doing that for 5 to 6 months. And what we've seen is, we've seen a lot of 11-3 kids run 10-6 1 year later. We've seen a lot of 10-9 kids run 10-4, 10-3 1 year later. We're not looking at 2-3 tenths of a second time drops. We're looking at 6 tenths of a second time drops. In some cases, 7 tenths of a second time drop. Yeah, if I've got a 10-4 kid, he's not going 9-7 automatically. I understand that. But I'm just telling you that when you really understand that speed grows like a tree once kids hit puberty, and we've got to run fast. Never in a kid's life are they more ready to run fast than after an outdoor track season. They've run fast. They run really fast. We don't want to give them a ton of time off and go away from running fast. And so, there's layers to it, there's deloads, but our goal is to use assisted sprinting and overspeed to continue to progress and to make them a faster sprinter. Because if their peak speeds break that glass ceiling, go north 1.1 mile per hour, 1.5 miles per hour greater, they're a whole different sprinter. And to me, that's the foundation. And then you start to endure that speed. Then you start to build out your distances, and you start to bring your lactate days in. You start to bring in some of your back to backs. But man, my philosophy is don't let anything break or interrupt that off season, where the best way to chase that speed is to 2 days a week, maybe sometimes three, and to not overdo it. Let them run fast, let them recover, let them run fast, let them recover. That weight room 1 day a week, be very strategic in that weight room. I'm talking about on their legs. I don't care what they do with their upper body, as long as they're not promoting bad posture or gaining too much mass or whatever it is. But that's really, I think, the three ways we use it. And I think that, for a track only kid, speed should be the foundation that you build in the off season, because that is the high tide that lifts all boats. I think that's Tony's. I think he loves to say that. But in that regard, I'm 100% on the same page with him. Is that the faster we get in the off season, and the more we don't mix a bunch of different things in there. I'm not interested in getting in shape. I'm interested in getting fast. So that's the key. And I think assisted sprinting is a great tool. It's not the only tool, but it is the top layer. And you've got to continue to work power, acceleration. Resisted sprinting is king, but assisted sprinting, if used the right way, and I think people say, I'll be quiet after this, let Chris chime in. But I think people, when they say assisted sprinting and overspeed, they're two different things. Overspeed is a very aggressive run. Assisted sprinting is assisting the sprint with lighter pulls and looking for better shapes, patterns, positions that kids can hold, that they can control. Sometimes, though, we've got to just overspeed them. Sometimes it doesn't matter if it's perfect. They got to get their foot through that ground, that negative foot speed, and they got to survive it. And you got to know when to do it, how much to do it. Every kid's different, but that's kind of how we use it. And I know Chris probably wants to chime in.
So, guys, what are you? I think sorry, Matt, I'm stealing
Go for it.
your
Let's do it.
question thing. So I think the thing I get the most is what settings does everyone use when you're doing overspeed and assisted? Do you guys want to share that with me? And Eric, are you using a different setting for assisted starts than you are max V assisted?
Absolutely. When we do short acceleration, so let's talk the track world, because that's what this is about. When we're working 20 to 35 meter type accelerations, we are definitely pulling more aggressively. And I will say that the bigger body, the heavier bodied athlete needs a higher pull to get them moving, right? So if we've got a linebacker who's running track for all practical purposes, 215 pounds, we might be pulling him anywhere from 4 to 6 out of the block, 6 kilograms. And dropping that down to 3 or 2 if we're doing variable at whatever speed setting that we have. If we're doing a lighter kid, maybe the pull is less, but we pull pretty aggressively in acceleration. So anywhere from 4 to 6. We pulled at 7 before if a kid's ready. Now on an 80 meter, overspeed, where we're building into that 40-meter run, and then that last 40 meters is very fast. We don't pull that heavy. I mean, we usually start at a 2.5 pull. We go up to anywhere to 3 to 3.4 over those type of distances, because those runs get very fast towards the end. And normally we're doing 2 of those at most. Kids can't really handle 3 of those. And for the most part, we like to pull heavier on the first run and back off that pull on the second run. And there may be, yeah, I have a great story that I should tell about Floyd Hire. Matt, I think you've heard that story about, what we did when he was supposed to run 2, and he finally hit, the 27.3 miles per hour on the overspeed. And I told him I was pulling him at 3.6, but I pulled him at 4.3 because I wanted to hit it and get out. And he's like, okay, I hit it. Yeah, let's do another one. I'm like, no, go home. But anyway, when we rarely ever have a kid run faster on the second pull than they do on the first. And our experience has kind of been, maybe I equate it to, I'm talking about these 80-meter, 100-meter overspeeds where they're really building in and then they're flying in that last 30 meters. Normally, maybe I use it to accustomed to this. I bungee jumped one time in high school. I bungee jumped on an all-star football trip from like 250 feet in the air, and I was terrified. And I forgot to order the picture that proved I did it. And so when I bungee jumped, I'm like, oh my God, I got to go get a picture. And I paid the picture, and it was not easier to bungee jump the second time. It was harder. Even though I had done it, I was terrified to do it again. And I think when kids run really fast, there may be either a fatigue factor or whatever it is, but they just don't tend to run. And this is someone who's done it a bunch, not someone who's maybe, you know, not running well in the first one. That can certainly get faster. But when they're running really fast, I'm talking about kids that are running 25, 26, 27 miles per hour at the end of that tether. They tend to not run faster in the second one. They're a little bit slower, still fast, but a little bit slower. And we tend to just pull less because I'm always worried about fatigue. I'm always worried about, hammies and this, that, and the other, even though we do a pretty good job of making sure our kids can handle it and they're ready. But again, in some of those really long runs, we tend to stay between 2.5 and 3.5. And once in a while, if I've got to get in and get out and get a kid to hit a certain mark, we'll pull at 4.3 to 4.5, but nothing greater than that. So that's usually our range in some of those really fast longer runs.
That's a really good point. And Eric, what you're talking about on hitting those extreme miles an hour is the peak speed that someone's going toe off. Just so people know, that's different than that top speed that's looking at an average between the top and the bottom, acceleration, deceleration between every step. So those are just good things to know because sometimes people are like, that's crazy fast. But yeah, your body can go faster at one moment in time, but it can't maintain it. And so you're looking at that. And then JT, I think it would be interesting to hear your perspective with a big team with one unit, how you're making assisted work in your first season with that. What are you finding was working for your program?
Well, my mind is still trying to wrap around the thought that, or what Eric said earlier, when he said seven 1080 machines. I mean, man, my guy Eric's gonna get to heaven and be like, "This is it. I've been living it. It's just ridiculous." Um, but yeah, so I think first and foremost, not all my athletes hop on a 1080. My boys and girls track and field team is about 289 right now, and that includes all events.
Jeez.
That's amazing.
Um, and that's after tryouts. I mean, we had 672 kids attempt to try out, and so it's pretty cool. The problem is that you have to prove to me that you can run and I can look and see ground contact. I can see where your posture is. I want to make sure that you're able to run and handle that. Let's say you have a history of hamstring issues. No, you're not hopping on the machine. But I've been using it, and I don't go as far as Eric. I give them a 20-meter run in, and then I'm free lapping their fly 30. And the reason why is because I know what their fly 30 is without the 1080 machine, and then I use the fly 30 with the free lap with the 1080 on assisted sprinting. I had a really good coach tell me that he's like, you want to get to 5%. So I know what their 5% of their fly 80 should be, and if they're not going fast enough, there's things we can do. If they're going way too fast, now that I have measurable data, I know what we need to do. So universally, and this is Chris telling me to do this, is and I'm trying to look it up on my phone while Eric was talking. The concentric load and the eccentric load, I have them on my 1080 at 4, and it's been really nice. It's been just enough. And it's interesting, Eric saying that they don't go faster in their second rep. That's not been my experience. 100% of the time, they go faster in the second rep. Now, I'm only doing 30 meters basically with the assisted sprint, and they don't go as far as you. Uh, I'm only having them basically do 2 reps at the end, and then we call it, and then we start doing our bounds and things like that. So that might factor in. But the reason why is I think, and maybe my hypothesis is wrong, is that when the athletes hop on the machine the second time, they know what to expect. And they get a little taller, they're hitting the ground. And not only that, but they want to beat their buddy and they want to beat the time they just did. And so if you have a boy that's like, I just went 281, well, I have to break 280 now, and so they give a little more effort. But in regards to having a big team, there's a group of kids that have been segmented out, and it's not always the same. Sometimes it changes. And like you guys are doing assisted today, the rest of you are not, and they're still doing their fly 30s, and they're still doing their top speed mechanics and everything. And so we get what we need out of it. Some kids get the extra level. So when an athlete walks up to me and says, well, why can't I do it? I always have an answer, and some of those times is like, you're not ready yet, and I mean, one of my fastest athletes is a football player. He cannot pick up his legs to save his life. He really does not have good posture. I'm afraid by pulling him, we're going to put him in a position to probably get hurt. And honestly, his maturity level is really low. I don't trust him. And so that will come over time, but prove it to me. And so right now I have, let's see, like last week I had 11 athletes use the assisted sprint. And what I also like about it is that it gives enough time to recover and rest and watch their other friends do it back and forth. And I'm in no rush to have them hop on that thing. I mean, if they take 11 to 15-minute break in between, I'm totally fine with that. And they're fine with that too. Just practices tend to be a little longer on those days.
Sure. Chris, can you jump in on that and talk about your experience of how soon you put assisted sprinting in? Because I think, JT, you made a really good point on maturity. At this level, we're not talking the collegiate space, we're not talking the pros, we're talking about the high school level, like who is appropriate to be on this device, when do you put them on? Because I know there's stories out there like, and hey, this person had terrible gait mechanics. We put assisted on and boom, their brain kicked in, their neuromuscular system, and we look so much cleaner as a runner, which is a huge advantage if you can get someone to clean up those front side mechanics very quickly with assisted. But I also think what you just said there, JT, is like, are we ready for it mature wise? Like, is it safe? So Chris has the most experience on that. I'd love to hear your opinion of how you're making those determinations.
As a track coach, we tier it out like JT does, and you have to hit certain times and mostly you can't be a heel striker.
Okay.
But if you hit certain times, you move up into tiers and you get different access to different workouts and equipment. Because we have 180 guys on our track team and 100 of them are sprinters. So we can't put up, and we have 4 machines. We actually have a Dynaspeed and then 3 1080s. So that number, that tier 1 who gets most use, in fact, indoors, we trained every workout on a 1080. We didn't do any speed endurance. Everything was on 1080. But if I'm at my house, at my gym, and it's a one-on-one, or I got 2 or 3 kids, then I can find ways to use it for the average kid who wouldn't get it at a track practice. Then you can use it differently. Whether it's just a toe pop, assisted toe pop, do you learn to get your feet off the ground and feel that forward lean over your 2 middle toes to teach you how to get out in front and have the confidence to get your body weight out in front of your heart out in front of your toes. There's a lot of different things that you can do with it with a kid who isn't running 9.5, 10 meters a second or 10.5 meters a second on a fly. So again, it's a tool that you can use a lot of different ways. One thing that I've done with kids who hit certain levels is we change body positions. Like, can you go over speed with your arms across your chest? So we're taking away your arms to counterbalance. Now your feet have to counterbalance more. Can you run with a twist? Twist 10 degrees to the right and really focus on that longer reach with the hamstring and force that turnover because it's going to hold your pelvis in a better place to retrain that turnover. One thing we're going to do when we go outside is we're going to do, well, we've got all their stride lengths. We're going to do 85% of their stride length and put white tape down and try to get your feet down in between to try to really improve their frequencies. Because if you're pulling someone and they're putting on the brakes, you're not improving their frequency. But if you give them a target of where to put their foot, they know they've got to get that foot down. And I'm not going to use wickets because I don't want a kid to kick it. I don't have to reset them up every time. Um, we're just going to put tape down.
What loads do you do, Chris, besides the 4 kg like you recommended to JT? Just to answer your own question earlier.
Bigger guys, we go heavy. We go heavier. And if I'm taking away a body part, like if you got to run with your arms over your head, I'm going to pull 6, 6 or 7 just because I want that harder pull so your legs have to turn over faster. And we only hold that for about 20 meters. Um, so it's not a full 80-meter thing. Um, Prime times, we've done prime times with it. Again, that's going to be fairly light because if you go too heavy and you drag them, your hamstrings have to work too fast and you're going to get a cramp. Someone's hamstring is going to cramp up.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah, and
sense
I
because my girls get a lot more bang for their buck when I'm putting 4 on it than the boys. Um, the boys, the rate of difference between like their fly 30 and then their fly 30 with assisted sprinting when I'm putting on 4 kgs on it, uh, they're a little heavier. But when the girls do it, my gosh, dude, they're flying. I mean, it's the rate of improvement. So yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed is that probably scaling it down a little bit with the girls because they're going way more than 5% of whatever that, fly 30 should be.
Yeah, and I think something else to add to this is, I think like anything else, it's really good to know what your athletes are capable of, right? Know what their outputs are. So like load velocity profiling is a great thing to do because we really know, what an athlete's max speed is and all their different VDEX. But with assisted sprinting or overspeed, either way, and we have data on like 200,000 sprints. So, I mean, this has been going on a long time. And whether it's an elite sprinter, and it really is more so this way with an elite sprinter, but it tends to be this way with pretty much everyone is their range or their ability to run beyond their max speed is about 1 mile per hour. So assisted sprinting or overspeed you really, if you've got a 16 mile per hour sprinter and you're able to measure, you're not going to be able to really run that athlete faster than 17 miles per hour. In some cases, you'll be able to go a little bit faster, but once they're really about 1 mile per hour above their top speed, that's about the tolerance point where they can, or that we've seen that they can maintain good running mechanics, right? Ankle stiffness, front side posture, and that they can handle that without getting too crazy, shutting down the run. And JT, as you play around with assisted sprinting and overspeed, and you start to increase the distances that you do it, you're going to see that once you start going beyond 50 or 60 meters, those runs get tremendously fast. They are going to go above what they're capable of. And that's when chaos hits. That's when the brain is in chaos, fight or flight truly, and it is trying to figure things out and operate on the go. And you can really see a lot about an athlete who is very calm and very calm and relaxed running fast, and others that are not, right? And so that tells you a lot. And we've had a few really high level sprinters that were 10 6 kids or better all the way down to 10 flat kids, and we had a lot of 6 7 week peak season type assisted sprinting where if they had a track meet on a Friday and they had another track meet on a Saturday, so there was an 8 day spread. This speed workout happened on a Tuesday, right? So Friday they had a couple of days clearance, a little bit of ramp up, Tuesday speed workout, and then another track meet on Saturday. And the workout was basically like a really good warm up, some pogo, some ankle stiffness, some plyos to potentiate, some 10-meter block starts, maybe two or three, and maybe one of them was against resistance, 10 kgs. But two to three 10-meter block starts, two 30-meter accels, a build up, and then two 80-meter pulls. And there was 15 minutes recovery in between the first pull and the second pull, and that was the speed workout. And we did this for 6, 7 weeks, and we would have a GPS tracker on them in all their track meets. So we were getting very accurate data. And we pretty much, for the most part, knew that if an athlete, and again, peak speed, but if we had an athlete hit 26.3 miles per hour on an assisted sprint, and that was their peak speed, they were going to peak at about 25.3 4 days later in their track meet. And they did. If we had an athlete, we had an athlete hit 27.3 miles per hour 1 week before the state track meet, and he hit 26.3 miles per hour peak speed in his 100-meter dash. So it's really, there's a really good correlation between that and really trying to, again, there's other factors. I'm talking about this in a vacuum, but essentially, if you're controlling all the variables, you really can count on that. So if you can continue to get faster and faster, and you can see those overspeeds going up, and it doesn't always work with like, hey, you can pull less and less and less and run faster. As with anything, the faster kids, when they really go and they put those outputs out, they put a lot more torque on their bodies, and they can't really, they don't need all that extra work. So that's why we just pulled that last rep and said, we're done. But again, just as a frame of reference, if you know your kids' max speeds, what their max velocities are, stay. You can really, really get them in the overspeed situation and just be thinking about sort of 1 mile per hour north of what they're capable of. No, come here.
That's a
Sorry, guys. That's
No,
my
no,
thought.
you're good, Eric. I think that's a really good point, and this is a question we got in the chat. I want you guys to dive into when you're thinking about and Chris, I know I've had this conversation with you because we got guys in the NFL for combine saying, okay, they're using assisted sprinting now, but how close to the combine do I start shutting it down, or do I shut it down? Is it 2 days before? Is it 2 weeks? We're in uncharted territory, and that's why we have these conversations so people ask this question. So the question is, when you're getting like 2 weeks out from a big event, a big track meet, let's say it's later in the season, we're getting closer to state. How long are you doing assisted? Are you starting to taper that off? Will you not do assisted? What are some of your guys' thoughts around that as strategies?
I go right up to the state meet.
Me too.
So do I. So do I.
Amazing. And I think we
As
get a lot of
long as
pushback. We get a lot of pushback though because it's so different than what people have thought of in the past.
Well, if they've been doing it all year, it's not going to throw them off at all.
Yeah.
And I live in Chicago where we still have snow on the ground, thank you to this lovely storm last weekend.
What's a storm?
Yeah,
It's like
70
90.
mile an hour winds, 5-inch hail, big as my fist. It was lovely. I don't do overspeed when it's cold outside. That's a bad idea.
Do you have a temperature that you shut it down at? Like I've heard 60 degrees
60,
Fahrenheit,
55,
by the way.
60. Yeah, I prefer 80 and 90. If it's 80 and 90, we're out all the time because I think when you're outside and it's cold, the blood kind of pools up and it stays away from your limbs, and you're asking a lot for those limbs to move really fast when it's cold outside. The track surface changes, it gets really, it's just different. So I wait for it to be temperate, meaning, sun's out, guns out, and then I'll pull. If everyone's hooded up and they've got sweatshirts on, I'm not pulling. We're gonna do acceleration.
Last thing, now that we are officially at the 10-minute mark, just to be respectful of everyone's time, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, the high school speed. There is the financial piece, purchasing equipment, kind of things like that. Fundraising budget. Eric at Plus 2U has his own business. So I'd be interested to hear your spin in regards to like recruiting, talking to parents, kind of like that piece of it as well, because obviously budgeting is a little different. But we could just go rapid fire. I know, Chris, accumulating all of your units has been a process kind of over time. versus JT just won recently. So I think some interesting kind of spins and perspectives. But if we just went 2 minutes a person, Adam can take us home. But if we talk about unit acquisition, fundraising, kind of high school, that kind of aspect, that'd be great.
I
Eric
teach at
and
a public school. There's about 2,400 kids. It's just neighborhood kids. All the kids that are have NIL deals and are super like awesome. They go to the private, and there's a lot of private schools. They're all like the best teams in the state, or rather the nation, down the street. I don't get those kids. So what do you do? I can't even ask athletes to give money to be part of the program. And so what do? We host very large track meets, and we make a lot of money on them. I've become a full-time fundraiser as well as a speed coach and head coach and history teacher. So we host track meets. It's a lot. And then we have one coming up. It's going to be about 5,000 kids, and it'll be 2 days. It's huge. And so my parents are on board. The athletes all are a part of it. It's part of their grade. 25% of their grade is serving and working a fundraiser. We do email and campaigns like e-team sponsor and things like that. I sell gear. We make money on that. We just find ways to fundraise because our school district gives us nothing. I mean, a pole vault landing system, it's gonna be 33 grand. A high jump pit is another 15 grand. The gill fusion blocks that I have, they're 350 each. The blocks, rather the hurdles, 350 each. And I have two sets for short hurdles and long hurdles. We just spend money wisely. We're really frugal, but also we're going to give the best that we can to the athletes because we want them to really see that there's value in it. So the 1080 machine happened to be that one that we saved up for, and ended up, pulling the trigger. It was not easy to buy. It's how do you spend 22 grand on something and then be like, it's worth it, and also say it's worth it only for a small population of the team. You need to make sure that everybody is on board and then pull the trigger. I'm glad I did. I could have bought the knockoffs. I went on Twitter and said, what should I get? And I had a lot of suggestions of the Chinese one or even the one that Altus gives. Those probably are great. But I said, I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to make sure I spend it on something that's going to work, last the test of time. I'm going to have a community like this one that I can make sure I go and find value in and also get advice from and wise counsel with. So yeah, and now my entire program and community is like, when's our next one? And then one day we'll be like Eric, where I can get on a Zoom and say, I have 25 Sprint 2 machines and I'm awesome and I have a cool beard, So one day.
Well, I think JT, thanks on the beard thing, man. That's like I
Yeah,
lost all my hair at 20 years old, so this is the only hair I got. So I'm obsessed. I have an obsessive, I have an obsessive personality. That's probably why I have 71080 sprints in this beard. But long story short, for us, it's a business decision. So I think as entrepreneurs, we have to understand that if we're going to make an investment, what's the return on investment going to be? And Cyrus, stop, man. Stop, buddy. And, for us, I think if you are able to communicate the value of a 1080 for the athletes that you're going to develop, and, if you can communicate to your customers and clients how you're going to use it and how it's going to make them better, then you've got to have obviously a business plan to recoup that money. And I think anybody who's in private sector training, whether it's a boutique facility or whether you're just a coach doing one-on-ones or whatever, there is a price structure and how to use a 1080, how to create value in that, how to use the data and the transparency to say to a parent, listen, I'm not giving you an opinion, I'm giving you quantitative analysis of development. You should be able to recoup that investment within 4 to 6 months. Now, if you don't listen, if you're a coach with 6 clients, you're not getting a 1080. Okay. But if you're an established coach with a good business and you've got cash flow coming in and you've got a good amount of clients, reach out to me. I'll be glad to tell you how you should cost structure your sessions, maybe how you should reconfigure your business, maybe how you should get out of the weight room of monitoring and catching a tiger by the tail of watching 20 kids squat and use the 1080 to sort of, take that next step in your business. Reach out to me. I'll be glad to tell you how we did our first one and how we paid for it within 4 months. And then, 4 years later, it's just, it produces a lot of revenue for our business over and over and over again. And so, like I think you just have to like anything, take a little bit of risk, right? I think anybody can probably get financed for one, and you just got to have a solid plan to get an ROI and to get that thing paid off in a quick amount of time. And I won't share it on this webinar, but I also have some other ideas for any coaches who want to reach out that maybe have some independently wealthy clients that they're training. I can share with you a couple of strategies and ideas on how maybe you could approach them to get yourself a 1080. Maybe I got one or two of my seven that way, just maybe.
Chris, take us home. What are your thoughts in the Chicago area?
Well, I had a small business and I saved up money and I had money sitting there and I could have got my daughter braces and all
Could
those
have.
other things, but I thought it was a way that I could really learn a lot about my trade, that I could quantify things and learn from it. So for me, it wasn't only a business investment, but it was an investment in my education because it was data that I hadn't seen before and data that other people didn't have. And so from our track team, we have 4 pole vaulters and 100 sprinters. I think the boys coach and the girls coach said, what, let's put money towards sprinters. Why are we spending money on pits and things like that for 6 or 8 kids? Let's get stuff for sprinters because what do sprinters always get? They get a baton and that's it. But yet that's 2/3 of your track team. And so if you're going to appropriately allocate funds to the bulk of your team, I mean, that's kind of why we went with the 1080.
That's a good comment on the sprinters. I hadn't heard that before, but that's really interesting and thoughtful of one reason you would get it. Now, awesome guys. I really appreciate you joining us today. I enjoyed the discussion on assisted sprinting. I know we could dive more into that, and we probably will again on another version of this. But real quick, I want all you guys. So first of all, you guys are always on different podcasts and different things out there, but people want to learn from you. And Eric, I'm glad you brought up like please plug where you guys can be found on social media, just to give people a highlight. JT first, Eric, and then Chris, take us home.
Yeah, Adam, I hope one day we can talk about what you can do with the 1080 and hurdles because it's
Okay.
been groundbreaking for us.
Yeah.
Long story short, we have a kid 7-stepping now, and he went from 14.4 and now he's 13.91, and we just started our season 1080, 100% of the reason. Okay, so yeah, I host the On Track and Field podcast. You can just find On Track and Field anywhere. I think Chris has been on there 3 times because he's the best. And I mean, you just Google my name. I put stuff out there. I think anything that I do, I'm a recipient of really incredible coaches that have just found value in me for some reason and just gave me what they do. And I mean, that's how we all get better. So my philosophy towards all that on social media and like Twitter and Instagram is just share everything between contracts for your team managers and what you should be doing with the 1080 and everything in between. And so yeah, you can just Google JT Ayers and you'll find me out there, and there's stuff on CoachTube and everything, or email me. I'm happy to share anything and everything because someone shared it with me.
JT, my son's a hurdler, and we overspeed him over the hurdles all the time. I mean, we lower the hurdles a little bit, but we do it all the time. So we'll talk. I'm mostly on Instagram, just Eric Lichter on Instagram. Also, my company's Plus Two University, heavy on Instagram. Also on X, Coach E Lichter, I think on X, and then Facebook. And then certainly, you can reach out to me through email or mobile or whatever it is.
I'm bad at social media. I know I have a Twitter account. I know I have an Instagram account, but I don't know what's on there. If I don't even know my password for my Instagram. Um, you can just go to Slow Guy Speed School, and there's my email. I do have a school account where I'm posting all the assessments of all the athletes I get. I'm posting my weekly workouts, all kinds of stuff. So if you want to see what I'm doing and see how I see things, that's a good place to start.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it today. And we'll talk to you all again very, very soon. So make speed happen. Have a great rest of your St. Patrick's Day and talk soon.